Hi everyone, welcome back to ISC Psychology. Today, we will continue with theories of personality development. We will focus on humanistic theories, understand why they emerged as a different branch challenging Freud's psychoanalytic school, and also look at the beginnings of trait theories and personality testing. As always, I have included important board exam tips to help you know key focus areas to pay attention to while studying, as well as potential exam questions. So follow along as we go. Before we start Rogers and Maslow individually, it's worth understanding what humanistic psychology was reacting against. By the mid 20th century, psychology was dominated by two schools: psychoanalysis, that is, Freud's view that humans are driven by unconscious drives and conflicts, and behaviorism, the view that humans are shaped entirely by conditioning and environmental rewards and punishments. Humanistic psychologists found both of these views inadequate and, frankly, rather bleak. They argued that neither approach captured what is distinctively human: our capacity for choice, growth, creativity, and pursuit of meaning. The humanistic approach proposed that human beings have an innate tendency towards growth and self fulfillment. The most important perspective on any person is their own subjective experience. So, personality should be studied in terms of potential and health, not just pathology. With that framing, let us start Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers was an American psychologist and one of the founders of humanistic psychology. He was also the creator of person centered therapy, one of the most widely practiced forms of counseling in the world. Rogers' entire theory centers on one central question: what conditions allow a person to develop a healthy, authentic personality? His answer revolves around three interconnected concepts: the self concept, the distinction between real self and ideal self, and the conditions of positive regard. Let us start with self concept. Rogers defined the self concept as a person's overall perception and understanding of who they are, including beliefs about their own abilities, personality, roles, and identity. Self concept answers the question, who am I? It is not fixed. It develops and changes over time through experience and interaction. And crucially, it is not necessarily accurate. The self concept is not who you actually are, it is who you believe yourself to be. Real self versus ideal self. Now, Rogers distinguished between two versions of the self. The real self is who you actually are: your genuine feelings, values, experiences, and ways of being in the world. It is the authentic you, not the performed or edited version. The ideal self is who you think you should be, the person who you aspire to become, shaped by your values, the expectations of others, and cultural standards of what a good person looks like. These two selves are rarely identical. The key is how large the gap between them is. Now we come to the concept of congruence and incongruence. Congruence occurs when the real self and ideal self closely match, when who you are and who you think you should be are largely aligned. Rogers argued that congruence is the hallmark of psychological health. A congruent person experiences low anxiety, genuine self expectance, openness to experience, and authentic personal growth. Incongruence occurs when there is a significant gap between the real self and the ideal self, when who you feel is very different from who you think you should be. Incongruence produces anxiety, defensiveness, distorted self perception, and blocked personal growth. Now we come to the concepts of unconditional and conditional positive regard, which is the most important concept of this chapter. Rogers argued that the conditions under which a child is raised determine whether congruence or incongruence develops. The key mechanism is positive regard, the love, acceptance, and approval that children receive from significant others, especially parents. Conditional positive regard means love and acceptance are given only when the person meets certain standards or conditions. So things like, I will love you if you behave well, I will approve of you if you succeed, and I will accept you if you are who I want you to be. This creates what Rogers called conditions of worth. The child learns to suppress or deny the parts of the real self that do not earn approval, and to perform the parts that do. Over time, the real self becomes hidden even from the person themselves. Conditional positive regard leads directly to incongruence. Unconditional positive regard means love and acceptance are given freely, not contingent on the person's behavior, success, or conformity to expectations. This is not the same as approving of everything the person does. It means the person's worth is not in question. Things like, I accept you as you are, even when I disapprove of a specific action. Unconditional positive regard allows the real self to develop authentically, without the suppression that creates incongruence. It is, in Rogers' view, the essential ingredient for healthy personality development. The fully functioning person. Rogers' ideal of psychological health, which is the endpoint of positive development, is what he called fully functioning person. This is someone who has received sufficient unconditional positive regard to develop a congruent self concept, and who is therefore open to ongoing growth. The fully functioning person has 5 key characteristics. Number 1, open to experience. No defensiveness. All feelings and experiences, including difficult ones, are acknowledged and accepted rather than denied or distorted. Number 2, existential living. Lives fully in the present moment, not dominated by the past or anxious about the future, genuinely present in each moment as it unfolds. Number 3, organic trust. Trust their own judgment, feelings, and reactions as a guide to their behavior, does not constantly second guess their inner experience. Number 4, freedom. Feels genuinely able to make choices, takes responsibility for decisions, rather than being controlled or circumstances by people or others. Number 5, creativity. Adapts flexibly and constructively to new situations and challenges. Does not rely on rigid routines or external structures to feel safe. An important ISC exam tip. The fully functioning person is Rogers' version of psychological health. Not a perfect person, but one who is open, present, authentic, and growing. So it is important that you know all 5 characteristics and describe them in detail if there is a question. Your syllabus asks for one criticism of this theory. So Rogers' theory is difficult to test scientifically. Concepts like the real self, congruence, and the fully functioning person are hard to define and measure objectively in quantifiable ways. The theory has also been criticized for being too optimistic. It assumes that people are naturally growth-oriented and good, which critics argue ignores genuine destructive tendencies in human nature. Additionally, the emphasis on individual self-concept reflects Western individualistic values and may not translate well to collectivistic cultures. Our second humanistic theorist is Abraham Maslow, an American psychologist best known for his hierarchy of needs, one of the most recognizable models in all of psychology. Like Rogers, Maslow was interested in human potential and growth. But where Rogers approached personality through the lens of therapy and self-concept, Maslow approached it through the lens of motivation. What drives human beings, and what the highest levels of human development look like. Let us look at the hierarchy of needs, which you all have covered in Class 11. Maslow proposed that human motivation follows a hierarchy of 5 levels of needs. The fundamental principle is that lower level needs must be substantially satisfied before higher level needs become motivating. Think of it as a pyramid. You need to build a solid foundation before you can build higher. Level 1 are physiological needs at the base. The most basic biological requirements for survival, like air, water, food, shelter, sleep, and warmth. If these are not met, all other needs become irrelevant. A person who is starving is not going to be concerned with their self-esteem. Level 2, safety needs. Once physiological needs are met, the person seeks security and stability, safety of body, health, employment, resources, family, and property. This includes physical safety, financial security, and predictability in the environment. Level 3. Love and belongingness needs. Once safety is established, the person seeks social connection, like friendships, intimacy, family, and a sense of belonging. Human beings are fundamentally social creatures. Isolation is deeply aversive once lower needs are met. Level 4. Esteem needs. With belonging secured, the person seeks to feel capable and respected. Self-esteem, achievement, mastery of skills, recognition, and the respect of others fall into this. This level includes both internal, self-respect, and external status. Level 5 is self-actualization, which is the peak of the pyramid. This is the highest level, the full realization of one's unique potential. That is, becoming everything one is capable of becoming. Self-actualization looks very different for every person. It is not a single achievement, but an ongoing process of growth and fulfillment. An important exam tip: the pyramid runs from bottom to top, so make sure you know all the levels very well. Remember, lower needs must be satisfied before higher ones become motivating, so you must note the sequence and the name of each level and note this crucially important area. Self-actualization is the pinnacle of Maslow's hierarchy, but it is not something most people reach in a sustained way. Maslow himself estimated that very few people fully self-actualize, though many have moments of it. Characteristics of self-actualized individuals may include that they are very reality-centered. That is, they see the world clearly and objectively without any distortion. They are problem-centered, focused on external problems, not ego-driven concerns. They are autonomous, independent, not needing others' approval to feel secure. They have a sense of acceptance of themselves, of others, and of human conditions. They experience peak experiences, that is, moments of profound joy, wonder, or transcendence. What is a peak experience? A peak experience is one of Maslow's most distinctive concepts. He described peak experience as moments of intense harmony, happiness, or transcendence, feelings of being deeply connected, complete, and fully alive. During a peak experience, a person may feel at one with the world, a sense of awe, or a sense that everything is perfectly right. Peak experiences are most commonly reported by self-actualized individuals, but Maslow noted that they can be experienced by anyone. They are often associated with experiences of nature, music, art, love, creative work, or profound insight. For your exams, the definition of a peak experience is very important. The definition again is: a peak experience is a moment of profound happiness, harmony, and transcendence. Remember to memorize this carefully. We now move from humanistic theories to trait theories, and we return to the theorist you already know from video 1, Gordon Allport. In the first video, we covered Allport's definition of personality. Now we look at his classification of traits, because Allport did not just define personality, but also developed a systematic theory of its structure. Allport proposed that personality is made up of traits, stable dispositions that cause a person to behave consistently across different situations. But not all traits are equal in their power and pervasiveness. So, he classified traits into 3 levels. Cardinal traits. A cardinal trait is a single, all-pervasive disposition that dominates and shapes virtually every aspect of a person's life and behavior. It is so central to who they are that almost everything that they do can be understood in terms of it. Cardinal traits are rare. Not everyone has one. But when a person does, it is so defining that they become almost synchronous with it. Allport used historical examples, like a person who is so consumed by a lust for power that everything in their life reflects it. A cardinal trait is the most powerful and most pervasive level. Next are central traits, which are the 5 to 10 major characteristics that most people would use to describe someone's personality. They are the adjectives you reach for when someone asks you to describe a person you know very well. Things like she is kind, ambitious, organized, and warm. Central traits influence behavior across many situations, and they are consistent and important. But they are not as all encompassing as a cardinal trait. They are the building blocks of personality for most people. So, examples include honesty, warmth, shyness, ambition, or conscientiousness. Now we come to secondary traits, which are more peripheral and situational. They appear only in specific contexts and are less consistent and less central to the person's identity. They may be noticed by people who know the person well. For example, a person who is generally confident and assertive, but becomes noticeably anxious when asked to speak in public. The anxiety is a secondary trait. It appears in a specific context, but does not define the overall personality. So, for your ISC exams, remember the rule. Cardinal traits are the rarest but most powerful. Central traits are 5 to 10 and usually adjectives that most people use to describe a person. And finally, secondary traits, which are situational and pervasive. The hierarchy here is that one of pervasiveness. So remember that. Moving on to the next theorist. Raymond Cattell was a British American psychologist who took a more rigorous, data driven approach to trait theories. Where Allport worked largely through observation and case studies, Cattell used factor analysis, a statistical technique that identifies clusters of variables that tend to get together to uncover the underlying structure of personality. Cattell distinguished between two types of traits: surface traits and source traits. Surface traits are observable, visible patterns of behavior that seem to cluster together. They are what we notice in everyday life when we observe someone. If you observe a person tends to be talkative, sociable, and energetic, you are noticing surface traits. These are the surface of personality, visible and describable, but they do not tell us why the person is that way. Surface traits are generally what you see, so they are descriptive. Source traits are the underlying dimension that cause and explain the surface trait clusters. They are deeper, fewer in number, and more fundamental. Using factor analysis, Cattell identified 16 source traits, what he called the 16 personality factors, measured by the 16PF questionnaire. These 16 source traits are the building blocks from which all the visible surface patterns emerge. The relationship between them is that surface traits are the symptoms, while source traits are the underlying causes. So, if you want to truly understand a personality, you need to go beyond the surface to the source traits underneath. The most widely researched and empirically supported trait model in modern psychology is the five-factor model, commonly known as the Big Five, which was developed by Paul Costa and Robert McCrae. Through extensive research across cultures and using factor analysis on large datasets, Costa and McRae identified five broad dimensions that capture the most important ways in which personalities differ. The five dimensions are remembered using the acronym OCEAN. A critical point for your exams. Each dimension is a spectrum, not a category. People do not simply have or not have each trait. They score somewhere along a continuum, from very high to very low. Remember this because your ISC exams specifically requires you to know both the high version and the low end of each dimension. So starting with the O of ocean, O stands for openness to experience. So high scorers are imaginative, curious, creative, aesthetically sensitive, open to new ideas, experiences, and ways of thinking. They seek novelty and variety. On the other hand, low scorers are conventional, prefer routine and familiarity. They are practical, less curious about novel or abstract ideas, and value tradition and predictability. C stands for conscientiousness. High scorers are organized, disciplined, reliable, goal directed, responsible, and thorough. They plan ahead, meet deadlines, and follow through commitments. Low scorers are impulsive, disorganized, careless, spontaneous, and flexible. They may struggle with planning and following through, but can be adaptable and creative in their spontaneity. E stands for extroversion. where high scorers are sociable, talkative, assertive, and energized by social interaction. They seek stimulation in the external world, other people, activity, or excitement. Low scorers are reserved, quiet, prefer solitude, and introspective. They are not necessarily shy or antisocial, but simply less driven by social stimulation. Introverts recharge through solitude. A stands for agreeableness. High scorers are cooperative, trusting, empathetic, helpful, and harmonious. They prioritize getting along with others and are sensitive to others' needs. Low scorers are competitive, suspicious, antagonistic, and focused on their own interests. They may be less cooperative and more willing to challenge or confront others. And lastly, M stands for neuroticism. High scorers are emotionally unstable, anxious, moody, and prone to negative experiences like worry, sadness, and irritability. They tend to experience stress intensely. Low scorers are emotionally unstable, calm, resilient, and able to handle stress effectively. They are less reactive to negative events and recover more quickly from setbacks. An important exam tips for your exam. The most common mistake is that students often know each five is only positive or the higher end of the spectrum, but your syllabus explicitly requires both the high and the low score dimensions for all five, so don't skip the low end. Our final theorist in this video is Albert Bandura, the psychologist who is most cited in the history of the discipline. Bandura's social cognitive theory of personality occupies a different position from all the others we have covered. Where Freud emphasized unconscious drives and where humanistic theories emphasized growth and self-concept, Bandura emphasized the interaction between the person's cognitions, behavior, and their environment. His theory has two major components: observational learning and modeling, and the self system. Modeling and observational learning is Bandura's most famous contribution, demonstrated through his classic Bobo doll experiments. It is the idea that people learn by observing others. Observational learning is learning that occurs by watching the behavior of others, called models, and noting the consequences of that behavior. Crucially, no direct reward or punishment is required. We can simply learn by watching. So, modeling is the process of imitating the behavior of an observed model. A child who watches a parent handle stress calmly may model that coping behavior. A student who observes a peer succeed through persistence may model that approach. A key concept here is vicarious reinforcement. Learning occurs when we observe someone else being rewarded or punished for their behavior. We do not need to experience the reward or the punishment ourselves. We simply learn from seeing it happen to others. The self system. The three cognitive processes that Bandura proposed. That personality is also shaped by what he called the self system, which are basically a set of internal cognitive processes through which people regulate their own behavior. Self efficacy is a person's belief in their own ability to succeed at specific tasks or challenges. This is not the same as general self esteem or confidence. Self efficacy is task specific. So you might have a high self efficacy for mathematics, but low self efficacy for public speaking. High self efficacy is basically that the person approaches challenges with effort and persistence, expects to succeed, and recovers quickly from setbacks. Whereas low self efficacy means a person avoids challenges, gives up more easily, and focuses on potential failure. Self efficacy is one of the most powerful predictors of achievement and performance in psychology research. Next is self reinforcement, which is the process of rewarding or punishing oneself based on internal personal standards. We do not only respond to external rewards and punishments, but evaluate our own behavior against our own standards and respond to it. When we feel we meet our standards, we feel pride or satisfaction, which is basically positive self reinforcement. But when we fall short, we feel guilt, disappointment, and self criticism, which is negative self enforcement. Next, we come to the self goals. The self-set goals are the personal goals and targets that individuals set for themselves to guide and direct their behavior. Goals create internal standards against which we measure our own performance. They provide direction, motivate effort, and give meaning to activity. And lastly, one important concept is reciprocal determination. Pulling together all of this, Bandura proposed that the concept of reciprocal determinism is the idea that a person, that is cognition, behavior, and environment all influence each other simultaneously. This is a quick, helpful revision summary guide to help you study, because this video covers 6 theorists and the most of any chapter, so I know it has been quite heavy theoretically. All you need to know for your exams is each theorist by name, their framework, and key concepts. Rogers and Maslow are often tested together in a humanistic theories essay, whereas Allport and Cattell are typically shorter 2 or 4 mark short answers. The big 5 dimension is increasingly being tested with specific dimension descriptions, so always give importance to studying both the ends of the spectrum. Finally, Bandura questions usually focus more on self-efficacy and observational learning. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching, and as always, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Coming up next will be the last personality video on personality tests.